How's it going, spicy people of the internet? My name is Stand Up Poet and welcome to the Spice 8 Rack, a new show entirely focused on picking apart the flavour and lore of Magic the Gathering cards. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the 5 guilds represented in the most recent set, Guilds of Ravnica. These being the Reckless Izzet League, the Righteous Boros Legion, the Resentful Golgari Swarm, the Conniving House Demir, and the Death Cult poorly disguised as Greenpeace, Selesnya Conclave. In this first episode, we're going to predominantly focus on the unique keyword mechanics of each guild. Do they properly represent what their respective guild is all about? How do they contrast with other guilds and previous sets? Will the Boros Legion ever get an interesting mechanic? I don't know. It's been 13 years since their debut, and their most interesting one to date was deeply disliked and mechanically flawed. All of these questions will be explored, but not after a quick word from today's sponsor. Black Books Season 1 on DVD. Go on, stick Black Books on, kick your feet up, laugh with Tamsin Gray. Forget the fact that Graham Linehan is a transphobe apologist. Look at Bill Bailey go! Okay, that's enough. A wee bit of backstory for the uninitiated. Ravnica is an hang on. Is an ecumepolis, meaning that it's a world covered almost entirely by a city, with minor exceptions such as the reclaimed Gruul Wilds and the parks and farms run by the Selesnya. On Ravnica, there are 10 guilds, each with their own role. For example, the Boros Legion are the police and military, the Azorius Senate are the lawmakers, and the Orzhov are the Catholic Church. Secular zing! These 10 guilds get into petty conflicts pretty much all of the time, but ever since the creation of the Guild Pact, aka the UN, but magic and actually effective, over 10,000 years ago, there has never been all-out war on the plane. The plane has come close twice before, however, the first being as a result of the machinations of Cezadet? 100 or so years later, and Ravnica almost fell into open war again. This time because, everyone wanted to win the Triwizard tournament, I think? Dragon's Maze was really weird. Look at that dumb sword. But now Ravnica is on the brink of war once again. And it could actually happen this time. For real, we're not kidding. Please buy our $250 booster box. The guilds have been infiltrated by agents of the ancient dragon planeswalker, Nicol Bolas, who wants to bring destruction to the streets of Ravnica, for the same reason he wanted to release the Eldrazi, for the same reason he built an army of zombie super soldiers, because, well, Wizards hasn't made that particularly clear, but it's probably very evil. That's the Sparks Notes version of how we got to the place we are today. Now, on with the guilds and their mechanics. The Golgari Swarm. Undergrowth. The Golgari are supposedly preparing to rise and assault the overworld in this coming war, consolidating the decay and death in which they live, to build an army of the undead, the dispossessed, and politically minded insects. Their mechanic, Undergrowth, represents this, as Undergrowth cards gain stronger effects the more creatures you have in your graveyard, showing the Golgari forces growing more effective the more death and decay they build up. Undergrowth's design, along with mechanics and keywords such as Surveill and Prowess, is so simple and elegant that I was surprised that it hadn't been printed in some iteration before. Whilst it's not exactly broken the imagination bank, Undergrowth has a very flavourful negative relationship with the Golgari's previous mechanic of Scavenge, which actively removed creatures from your graveyard by exiling them to put +1/+1 counters on your existing living creatures. This incohesion between past and present mechanics is representative of the vastly different governing practices of the previous Lich Lord Jared and the usurping Queen of the Golgari and pawn of Nicol Bolas, Vraska, who has almost certainly murdered Jared to death. Even more of a deeper dive is the fact that whilst Undergrowth and Scavenge work about as well together as a runaway lawnmower and a curious beagle, the Golgari's original mechanic, Dredge, actually fuels both of them in different ways, mechanically suggesting that whilst the previous and current age of the Golgari are at odds, they may one day find their way back to their horrid fungal roots. There is some reaching being done by a number of cards with Undergrowth on from a flavour perspective. The best cards with Undergrowth in my opinion are those such as Necrotic Wound and Kroll Foragers, as it makes sense that the more corpses the characters presented in these cards have at their disposal, the more potent their effects will be. Got more corpses? Got more poison. Boom. Got more corpses? Got more food. Boom. Don't mix those two piles up. However, cards like Moodmark Painter and Kroll Harpooner don't have any real connection to the mechanic that's printed on. How does having more dead creatures around you make you a better harpooner, or make you better at spooky face paint? Overall, it's an elegant mechanic that accurately represents the guild's intentions, even if some of the cards with the mechanic could have used a wee bit more spicing up. Undergrowth does get bonus points for mechanically showcasing a dichotomy between the previous and the current regime though. It's a real subtle touch that the designers really didn't need to implement. Good job. Have a biscuit. Not that biscuit, that's from the poison biscuit pile, you bloody trombone. The Izzet League. Jumpstart. Much like the Golgari's queen, the Izzet's current viceroy, Ral, is both new to the job and under the command of Nicobolas, Dominaria's most widely spread menace since Phyrexia. The Izzet League's guild mechanic this time round is Jumpstart, which, unlike Undergrowth and the two previous Izzet mechanics, isn't really brimming with metaphor. Replicate and Overload were the previous two Izzet mechanics, both showcasing the devastating power, potential scope, and definite need for greater oversight by the Azorius Senate that Izzet experiments had. Replicate let you pay an optional and repeatable additional cost to copy a spell as you cast it. Like Strive! Does anyone remember Strive? Commander staple mechanic Strive? No one? No. Yeah, me neither. Overload was another great mechanical representation of the guild who routinely forced creatures to fly against their will, allowing you to pay a replacement cost to change the target of a spell from one unfortunate boy to every unfortunate boy who was not your boy. Jumpstart, in comparison, is a wee bit lackluster from a flavour perspective. You can cast a spell from your graveyard by paying its costs and discarding another card. To me, this evokes a considered wizard repeating an experiment rather than the mana sink nonsense that the Izzet are known for. This change in scope may be intentional, as Ral is implied to be leading the guild astray under the influence of Bolas, but the relative ambiguity as to what the guild's new goals are and how the guild members have and have not changed under this new guidance leaves the flavour of this mechanical sidestep to be a wee bit of a disappointing one for me. Even the name, Jumpstart. How is playing a card from your graveyard jumpstarting anything? If Jumpstart had been something more like, as an additional cost to cast this card, you may discard a card. If you do, this card gains flash. That would have more readily evoked the mad wizard flavour that the Izzet are known for. Maybe Ral's direction for the Izzet is less about going big and instead going fast. This change could have given a wider scope for cards that had Jumpstart. Heck, with a wee bit of tinkering, even Ral could have had Jumpstart. Imagine how cool that would have been. The first instant speed planeswalker, and he's made of lightning and all. Alas, the version of Jumpstart we did get doesn't really have much in the way of flavour to attach to it. Discarding cards in red and blue is usually characterised as either a frantic search for knowledge or as careful consideration and informed sacrifice. This gels well with cards like Chemist's Insight and Radical Idea, as sifting through cards is a very Izzet thing to do, but then you have things like Sonic Assault, Quasi-Duplicate and Risk Factor. Most of these cards do have the feeling of Jumpstart, that kind of bang, boom, watch out, hot soup feel to them, but casting them from your graveyard mechanically doesn't represent that feeling. Jumpstart seems like a missed opportunity for the zaniest guild in the set, and Wizards was obviously very scared about breaking this mechanic, which is kind of ironic for the Izzet League. Risk Factor does get a pass, however, because the artwork is easily my favourite of the set. What even is that? Is that a goblin? Is that a Videlkin? Is that a switchboard man? It has too many eyes. What? The Selesnya Conclave. Convoke. The Selesnya Conclave returned to their roots with Convoke, their original mechanic from Ravnica, City of Guilds. A fan favourite, Convoke cards seen play in almost every format they're legal in. Selesnya, along with the final two guilds in this video, have not been infiltrated by Nihil Bolas, but they have gone through some changes since we last saw them. Selesnya as a guild have always been welcoming, yet secluded. Open to all, yet deeply insular, an inner conflict that's being attempted to be portrayed on cards like Tristani Discordant, but we'll be covering that in another video. This regression back into the safety of their conclave is represented on the guild's return to their old mechanic, as they back away from the scary and new and consolidate their roots and their forces. Convoke implies a sense of cooperation and unity, but the cards it's printed on don't always preach peace and love. Back in City of Guilds, for example, Hour of Reckoning was a Convoke spell that killed everything that wasn't a token creature. And in Guilds of Ravnica, March of the Multitudes straight up gives you an army of soldier tokens. Whilst this dichotomy is represented well on the effects of the cards Convoke is printed on, there's very little in the way of representation for this inner struggle in the art, flavor text, or even names of Selesnya's cards. It's very jarring to have the figurehead of your guild be so discordant, and yet every single other card within the guild's watermark makes no reference to any kind of turmoil or uncertainty, except for maybe Rosemane Centaur? And that's a bigger stretch than when my dad tries to fit into gym shorts. Shut up! That being said, only two of the cards printed with Convoke don't represent the mechanic well, in my opinion. These being Sprouting Renewal and Pause for Reflection. Every other Convoke card makes sense. Big creatures like Siege Worm are easier to summon with a bunch of devoted lads. Healing Loxodons will more readily come to the aid of greater numbers of soldiers. Even Pax Favor has 3 significant humanoid characters in the artwork, representing the casting cost necessary to pull the spell off with creatures alone. However, both Sprouting Renewal and Pause for Reflection have card art that doesn't have any connection with a convoking effect. Only one person's in this art. How does this represent masses coming together to cast a spell? This only showcases the Naturalize effect. Where's the representation of the knight being summoned? Is this the knight? If so, how could she be casting the spell that the card that summons her is representing?
America, explain!
Again, there's only one person here, and whilst this is very nitpicky, the best prevent damage card art, in my opinion, shows the damage being prevented or some kind of destruction as opposed to just the absence of anything. I feel like I gave those two cards a pretty hard time there, but honestly it's because it's very difficult to go wrong with good representation of Convoke, and so it stands out when it happens. It's just a shame that the flavour of these cards doesn't quite match up with the flavour of the guild leader or showcase the impact of said guild leader's discordancy. Boros Legion. Mentor. Well, Wizards have done it, folks. After decades of R&D and countless keyword mechanics, they finally did it. They finally printed a less reliable version of Bolster. In all honesty, I think Mentor suits the Boros Legion just fine and showcases the two most significant characters in this guild's conflicting desires in a brilliantly unified manner. Aurelia wants to open the doors of the guild and help the less fortunate, representative of how you can't target a creature with its own mentor, encouraging you to spread the Boros training, whilst Zeke wants to protect the Boros and Boros alone, represented in the fact that you can choose which creature gets mentored and could elect to only mentor creatures with a Boros watermark if you want. It may not be interesting, but it's certainly flavourful for how the guild is currently operating, and representing this disparity in one unified mechanic is a really hard thing to do, yet Wizards has managed to pull it off, which is quite impressive. On top of that, very few creatures seem like they don't deserve to have Mentor on them, unless you get really nitpicky. Yes, Goblin Banneret seems too low down the food chain of the Legion to mentor anyone, but this is made up for with how determined his art and flavour text is, implying that it's his passion for the Legion and not necessarily his skill that makes him a good mentor. Hammerdropper's flavour text implies a passing on of battle expertise, and whilst it is a bit odd how Sky Knight Legionnaire exists in this set without mentor, despite being a 3 times reprinted card and obviously a very respected company of soldiers within the world of Ravnica, this is a minor nitpick, and honestly the application of Mentor in this set is very on brand.
I just want to clarify, I did not mean that Mental should be put on Sky Knight Legionnaire. Of course, I understand that as a reprint, that's not possible. I just found it strange that the only reference to the Sky Knights was in this reprinted card. They're a very established group within the Boros military, and I felt that this was a missed opportunity flavour-wise. They could have replaced Parhelion Patrol with Sky Knight Sergeant or something like that, and still showcase the Sky Knights as a force that can mentor and can develop new Boros soldiers. Thank you for listening to this bit I stole from Anthony Thantano. Back to the video. Whoa!
It is a little frustrating how the player base has been crying out for a viable, non-combat themed Boros commander or Boros mechanic, but with Ravnica on the brink of war, I honestly understand why Wizards didn't try and shift Boros' guild identity for the sake of innovation in this set. House Demir. Surveill. Surveill. Sir Bloody Veil. Yes, lick that cardboard. Do you know what you're tasting? Do you know what you taste right there? Mixed in with the non-toxic ink and hollow foiling process, that, my dude, is the spice of pure flavour. Surveill is elegant. You can look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the Surveill number, and put any number of those cards in the graveyard, and the rest on top of your library in any order. In all but a very particular number of cases, it's a strictly better scry, and it has been pushed so hard. 27 cards in this set have Surveill or some kind of Surveill Matters text line. That's more than every Mentor and Undergrowth card in this set combined. That's more than every single card in this set with the Is It watermark. Surveill cards make up over 10% of the cards printed in this set. That's bananas! Whilst this wouldn't normally be notable from a flavour perspective, within the context of this set, where the Dimir are being set up as the sole guild that's aware of an intrusion into the other guilds of Ravnica, the fact that they have so many cards surveilling in this set really fits into the flavour of a guild constantly on the lookout. You're gonna see this mechanic a lot in this standard season too, with cards like Doom Whisperer, Dream Eater, Notion Rain and Sinister Sabotage primed to see a hell of a lot of play, extending the narrative that the Dimir are always lurking somewhere into the atmosphere of Friday Night Magic itself. Maybe that's reaching a wee bit too hard, but that's not even touching the reason I love the flavour of Surveill so much. Oh no, it's the potential for flavour within Limited. Dimir, of course, is black and blue, and the only other two guilds in the set with black or blue in their colour identity are Izzet and Golgari. Izzet spell-slinging decks are going to want cheap tempo cards like Disappearance and Sinister Sabotage, and Golgari decks are going to want premier black removal pieces like Price of Fame and Deadly Visit. Not only do these spells have a significant face value, but their Surveill mechanic actively helps the respective guild's own mechanics. Need more creatures in your graveyard for Undergrowth? Surveill can put them there. Need to cast a spell but you're only holding 2 lands and a voyeuristic skeleton? Old Floaty Boy can dig into your deck, put a removal spell in your yard, which you can then jumpstart. Dimir infiltrates both of these guilds' colours in Limited, and Surveill will make Dimir cards even more attractive to pick up for Izzet and Golgari players in Limited. And whenever a player surveils their Izzet or Golgari based deck, they are contributing to the extended narrative that the Dimir have these two guilds under their close eye. I have no idea if the person who designed Surveill had any of this in their head when they made the mechanic and fitted it alongside Undergrowth and Jumpstart, but it doesn't matter. This tiny, seemingly insignificant synergy between mechanics is an absolute masterwork of flavour meeting function, and representative of the greater narrative at play within this set. Yes, for absolute flavour, Surveill should have hit the opponent's library, but there's a reason why Fate Seal hasn't seen print outside of 2 Future Sight cards and the most powerful Planeswalker ever printed. Yes, some Surveill cards don't really make that much sense. How is making a random Boros soldier dizzy contributing to any intelligence gathering? And how does a wall of bones surveil anything, aside from the inside of my Charade EDH deck where it and Burglar Rat will find a cozy home together? But the flavour and story implication I found when I considered Surveill as a mechanic is so great that a lot of the petty quabbles I have with its application fall away. Dimir have never had such a strong mechanical identity as a guild than this iteration. Transmute was busted but lacking in any coherent style, making no sense on certain cards. And Cypher was... well, Cypher was the mechanic that gave us trait doctoring, so Cypher can go in the bin too. When I first started playing the game, my edgelord 15-year-old mind was first drawn to Dimir, and after seeing how they've been redeemed in the set, both mechanically and narratively, I was so happy that I wanted to start a YouTube channel that focused on flavour and lore within the actual cards of Magic the Gathering, just to talk about it. Jeez. Thanks for watching, guys. As I said in the last video, I want to keep making these, and so please do leave a comment if you have any questions, compliments, or critiques. I will read everything, and I will take it all personally. Any feedback on the content, presentation, or even promotion would be greatly appreciated. Stay spicy, my dudes. And in Guilds of Ravnica, March of the Multitudes straight up, dudes!